Welcome to a special edition of Daily Delivery. Michael Rand here, Chris Hine with me from Denver ahead of Game 7, Wolves versus Nuggets. We know, Chris, that it is a 7 p.m. Central Time start that confirmed when Indiana beat New York in Game 6 on Friday. A few extra hours for them to think about it, a few extra hours for Mike Conley's injury to feel better. I don't know, whatever it is, it's a night game and it's for everything, right?
Yes, it is. Your friendly traveling beat writer was hoping for the afternoon start.
Yes.
We prefer the afternoon starts when we don't have crushing deadlines to try to hit. So we that's a bit of a loss for the beat writer crew, but primetime game 7 on Sunday night. I mean, it's exciting. Like it's I'm I don't know that it's fully hit me at the game 7 between the Wolves and the defending champions is actually happening tomorrow night.
I don't know if it's hit everybody because it's only the second Game 7 in franchise history. The first one was awfully famous, and I wrote about this and talked about this a little bit the other day, but this one will come on the exact 20-year anniversary of the only other Game 7 in franchise history. That was May 19th, 2004. Kevin Garnett had 32 points, 21 rebounds. They beat Sacramento 83 to 80. I'd be surprised if this one's 83 to 80, although it's not surprising when one team has that little. It's been a weird series, right? Aside from game 1, which was pretty close until the final, minute and a half, 2 minutes, there hasn't really been a ton of tension for as even as the series is in terms of overall games won. It's been kind of blowouts and comfortable wins.
Yeah, it's a very odd tone to the series. We all kind of thought that like Wolves' late game offense and execution would be a would we'd shine a light on that in this series, and it hasn't happened outside of like you said, a couple stretches of game 1 there. One thing I think to keep in mind about game 7s, they tend to just be kind of weird.
Yeah.
Weird things can happen. Um, I actually was looking up the other day when I was writing about Mike Conley yesterday. Some of his game 7s, and a few years ago, the Jazz in the bubble played a game 7 against Utah, and the whole series, everybody scored triple digits pretty much the entire
Yeah.
series, right? But game 7 was like 82 to 78.
Yeah.
It was very strange. Like it was not like the rest of the series went at all. So I think you have to be, as a fan, you have to be expecting anything to happen, like literally anything, good or bad, because game 7s can just be weird because guys, maybe they try to do too much, maybe they're overly nervous, maybe they're overly excited. I don't think shooting, I think tends to wane a little bit in game 7s. We'll see how the officials decide to call things. You'd think going into it that the officials don't want to decide a game 7. So maybe that leads to a looser whistle, which I think would benefit the Wolves if that were the case.
Yes.
But you never know. Maybe they do call it tightly. Anything can happen. All bets are on the table for how any player may perform in game 7.
Well, I'm sure, and people should be ready for that anyway, even if it wasn't that history of a game 7, because that's the way this series has gone. Just when you think
Yeah.
you can predict what's going to happen in this series, the opposite happened. Like you'd have thought Denver would win at least one of those first two home games. Then you would have thought, well, man, Minnesota looks like they're on cruise control. They're going to win at least one of the two in Minnesota. And then, game 6 looks like the Wolves are, on their last legs. They go down 9-2 early after being, run off the gym 3 games in a row, and then they win by 45. Like nothing about this makes sense. So I think, yeah, whatever happens in game 7 will happen. I think part of it too that makes it weird, right? Or that causes it to maybe be lower scoring or strange things happen is like these teams know each other so well by now, and they're tired, right? Like they're kind of sick of each other, and they know each other's tendencies. They're like, oh man, these guys again for the seventh time in 2 weeks. Like we know what Nikola Jokic is going to do. They know what Ant's going to do. They know everything that's going to happen. So like stopping it is maybe a little bit easier, and they're just kind of gassed. So yeah, I wonder how all of that plays into it. And adjustments. We love to talk about adjustments, and I think the Wolves did make some adjustments, doubled Jokic a little bit more in Game 6 with some effectiveness, but you don't know if those are going to hold up in Game 7, right? Like these guys will have counterpunched so many times by this point.
Yeah, so I think that plays into maybe a little bit of what I was saying earlier, which is if you double Jokic and you make the bet that in a game 7 you're going to make the other Denver Nuggets beat you as opposed to Nikola Jokic. And I think maybe in a game 7 that might be the smarter bet to take. I don't know. Who knows? Maybe at home, somebody like Michael Porter Jr. hits two threes early, and all of a sudden,
Yeah.
he's out of his slump and he's off and running. And then if you add in that with Nikola Jokic's scoring prowess, are you in even more trouble than you might have been if you just decided to play Jokic straight up? I don't know. But I did think the Wolves. I think what the double teaming did for the Wolves on in Game 6 was I think there's a little something to be said about it activating their defense and
Yes.
just forcing them to play with effort and energy. Whereas if you double Jokic, everybody else on the floor knows they're going to have to rotate and react and be on their next man or their next assignment in the
Yep.
rotation. So it forces the Wolves to be active as opposed to reactive on the defensive end of the floor because everybody has to be running around and flying around. And I think we had a little bit of that missing in games 3 through 5.
Yeah.
The defensive activity wasn't quite there. They were a step slow. But when when you're going to have to be flying around on a defensive possession, I think it gives the Wolves maybe a little different mindset. So I wouldn't be surprised if early in the game the Wolves opt for this strategy
Yeah.
just to try to get themselves going, get the juices flowing, get the energy flowing on the defensive end of the floor. And, because I think that was so key to what they did in games 2 and game 6, just having that extra edge and energy right from the jump. And I think doubling Jokic and forcing yourself to rotate around with all 5 guys is one way to get everybody into the game early.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they had to do that in Game 2 without Gobert. And then, their preferred method, like you said, is to single Jokic and then kind of let Gobert roam. But that's not a true double team. That's like he's kind of protecting a lot of different things. But Jokic was so good especially in games 4 and 5, and other guys were still making him pay that it didn't really pay off. But you're right, Game 6, they were flying around and they were doing some of the kind of scramble things. It was almost best of both worlds where you can contain Jokic and everybody else. Although I think Jokic alluded to this. I did think Denver missed some shots that they usually make. Like obviously Denver's not usually going to score 70. I thought the Wolves defense was very good, but like Denver missed some open shots in Game 6 that I don't think you can just flat out count on them to miss in Game 7.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think especially early on in that 20 to
Yes.
nothing run, there were
Yes.
just some flat out misses by Denver that had little to do with the Wolves defense. The Wolves defense was excellent. Don't get me wrong, but I do think in the first quarter of that game, it was a perfect storm of shooting averages finally maybe catching up to Denver after some hot shooting nights. So I think they were like what 45% or something like that from 3 point
Right.
range in games 3 through 5. So they were missing some shots. It really was. I feel like the perfect storm in Game 6 in that way. So I think if you're Denver, that's what you kind of hang your hat on is you know those open shots were still a lot of them, or at least a decent number of them, were still there. It's about hitting them. But if that's going to be the Wolves' strategy, then you got to come out in a game 7 and knock those shots down. And maybe that's the bet the Wolves are willing to make now is try to make the supporting cast beat them as opposed to just Jokic as a scorer.
We saw how important Mike Conley Jr. was all season, even after the trade last year, and we certainly saw it in the difference it made in Game 6, just how he calms things down, how he can make big shots, how it takes a little bit of the stress off of Anthony Edwards to be in more of that primary ball handling mode where Denver can more easily double him and attack him. Seemed like Conley came through the game relatively healthy. Is he, we saw how important he was all year. We know it's what he brings to the court, what he brings in terms of helping them with their, emotional maturity level. He's got to be right up there in terms of the biggest factors in a potential game seven. I feel like he's especially important against a team like Denver that is so hard to, that will absolutely fillet you if you make a mistake or two.
Yeah, he really is on the offensive end of the floor because I think what you saw in Game Five when Ant had the ball at all times, just having that pressure
Yeah.
release of Conley being able to bring the ball up and get the Wolves initiated into the offense, I think did wonders or does wonders for Ant just to be able to not have to go all 24 seconds of a possession with the
Yeah.
ball in his hand. So that's huge. He's another shooting option. Obviously, you have to respect his 3-point shooting. Um, Help space the floor. He gets Rudy involved in the offense. All these things that were missing when he was missing in Game Five are going to be huge in Game Seven. I thought, I didn't know how his defensive activity was going to be in Game Six. Playing through the injury, I thought he looked fine.
Yeah.
All things considered, on the defensive end of the floor. One of the things that I think benefits the Wolves here, I think both teams benefit from having the 2 days off here. Denver to
Yeah.
just kind of recalibrate and take a breath.
Yeah.
The Wolves to give Conley an extra day to get healthy and maybe give Ant, whose tailbone might have been
Yeah.
bothering him, an extra day to get healthy. Um, so, I was really concerned about just what kind of Mike Conley you would see.
Yeah.
Offensively, he said he tried to take it a little easy, tried to just play at a little different pace, because I do think he was maybe storing whatever burst or energy he had to try and fit into the Wolves' defensive scheme.
Yeah. Well, Ant obviously is the focal point of all of this. And I wrote the other day, like I said, Garnett had that monster game, game seven, 20 years ago. I kind of wrote that Ant kind of has his chance to have that moment here. And obviously, Ant's much younger than KG was at that point. He doesn't carry nearly as much playoff baggage, nor is he as accomplished as KG was at that moment because KG was an MVP that year. But just in terms of the moment for Edwards, he's not going to shy away from it. He's definitely ready for this. He's ready for kind of the pressure of it. But what kind of Ant do you think we see in game seven? And, how does this play into his growth and kind of where he's at in his career, kind of whatever happens here?
I Ant has shown that the lights are not too bright for him in the playoffs in his career overall. So far, he's done well in elimination games. Um, I expect you're gonna see all he's got. The only thing is just trying to play within yourself, and I think for him, he has to guard against the not wanting to do too much.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing for him. And I think he's done a relatively good job of that this postseason. We talked about it in the Phoenix series and, earlier this series, he's done a good job of finding teammates. He's done a good job of making the smart play, and then picking his spots, finding his moments, finding the weaknesses in the defense to then attack and get his. Just keep doing that. I think the key for him in game seven is just do what you normally do. Don't try to do too much. Don't try to do anything outside of what you would do if this was, game one of the series. So that's what he has to guard against, especially on the road, trying to put the team too much on his back and forsaking the help of his teammates. The best thing he can do, especially early in the game, is maybe get his teammates going. And I think that's the key. That's what happened. He had a big first quarter on Thursday night. Everybody had a big first quarter
Yeah.
on Thursday night.
Right.
But look at how much different it was when Jaden McDaniels got going.
Yeah.
When Carl had the big game two, when Naz Reid was going in the fourth quarter of game one, when he has somebody alongside him that's feeling it,
Yep.
that's when the Wolves that's how the Wolves are going to win is so finding whoever that person is that's going to come along with him for the ride scoring wise Sunday is what I think he has to figure out early.
Royal Credit Union's Smart Checking accounts offer no monthly fees and no minimum balance. Enjoy financial freedom when you open your Royal Credit Union Smart Checking account online at rcu.org/go-checking. Insured by NCUA.
I wonder what Denver is thinking right now. And obviously they are resilient, but this is the second, they're coming off their second blowout in this series. It was the 26-point loss in game 2, now 45 points in game 6 with a chance to end the series. Obviously they came back from game 2 just fine and blew out the Wolves in game 3, but I kind of wonder where they are just in their preparation, in their mindset, in their adjustments, just everything, having been blown out a second time now.
I think they've been in this situation before the last 5 years. They played a few game sevens, been successful in them. You just draw on that experience. You have confidence that you are the more mature team in this situation, that you have been there. They haven't. You're in front of your home crowds. They're not. You hang your hat on the fact that, yeah, okay, they blew us out, but we could blow them out just as easily.
Yeah.
But as we've seen in this series, and I don't want to reduce it to just this, but is Jamal Murray going to show up, or is Jamal Murray not going to show up?
Yeah.
Because if Jamal Murray doesn't show up, the Wolves are probably going to win. If Jamal Murray shows up, Denver's probably going to win. You don't want to reduce the series to just one factor like that, but it feels like that, doesn't it?
Does to me. I mean, he has not been great in a lot of these games, and a lot of it is what they're doing to him. A lot of it is, I'm sure he's not been healthy for a lot of this year, and certainly has been healthy in the playoffs. But yeah, if you don't have that kind of running mate, and then you're kind of depending on Aaron Gordon, Michael Porter Jr., like those guys certainly can do it. And I think Gordon has been excellent when Denver has thrived in this series. But yeah, if you don't have him, you're asking a lot of everybody else, and you're asking a lot of Jokic, who again is a willing participant, is a 3-time MVP for a reason. But Murray's your clear number 2, and if he has another 4 for 18 game, I don't like Denver's chances for sure.
No, absolutely not. And I think that's when we think about those misses in game 1, that's what it was. It was Jamal Murray missing a lot of shots all over the floor.
Yeah.
And the Wolves just thrived off of that. He was saying that his elbow was bothering him. We'll see if he's able to get that healed in time. Not sure if there's any lingering issues with him and his calf, but we'll see. And especially if the Wolves and if the referee is going to let the Wolves play physical defense again, that's target number 1 when it comes to them playing really physical, is making life as difficult as possible for Jamal Murray.
Denver's favored by like 4.5, 5 in this game, so they're certainly still, seen as the team that's more likely to win. I think John Krasinski, who also covers the Wolves for The Athletic, had a funny tweet the other day. He's like, no game in this series should be someone by 4 or 5. It should be Wolves -24, Denver -36. I mean, just the way this series has gone, you can't imagine it. But I wouldn't be surprised if we have our first close game in Game 7. That would not surprise me.
I have zero feel for what's going to happen.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't even want to predict anything, because I did not think we'd see the kind of effort that the Wolves put on display in Game 6, and vice versa for Denver. So I have absolutely zero feel for what's going to happen on Sunday. I'm just going to try to sit back and enjoy it and write whatever happens.
Yeah. Well, we'll all find out at the same time. Chris Hine, appreciate it. Follow his work and everybody else's work. Chris is in Denver for Game 7. Follow that Sunday night, 7 p.m. And Chris, I'm sure we'll talk to you soon.
Sounds good. Thank you, Mike.